Hello everybody and welcome to Wessex Ways Podcast. Now you may notice there are no dulcet tones of Hedley today. However, we do have a guest on the show, and not only do we have a guest, we're also outside, as you may be able to hear from the, what am I calling this? Just sheer downpour.
It's December.
It's December. Right, so this is Kate. Kate, you were in one of the videos on my channel.
I was, about 6 or so weeks ago.
It was about 6 weeks ago, wasn't it? And I always said when we start this podcast, me and Hedley, I want to be able to talk about the videos a bit more that I've done on my channel and have a bit more of an in-depth look at those videos. So I thought, do you know what? Let's have a guest. So me and Hedley are having quite a few guests at the moment. So Kate, do you want to introduce yourself to our lovely podcast listeners?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kate Smith. I'm a history enthusiast. I'm a railway enthusiast. I'm a little bit of an adventurer, and that's kind of me, I suppose.
So we were chatting about a lot of the lines in your area, and we were talking about making a video. I mean, I said, right, okay. The key to YouTube is always telling a story, isn't it? And you said, oh, okay, well, I've got about 15.
Yes.
So like, okay, right, this is great.
You know, there's that old adage that everyone's got a book in them.
Yes.
I've got about 25, to be fair. So
Fair play. Right, so before we waffle a bit more about all that, so this is Wessex Ways Podcast. Hedley's not here today because Hedley's probably doing another interview, because we're trying to mix things up a little bit. We're trying to make it, although you guys love the waffle that we do on this podcast, we're trying to add a bit more flavour to it as well, some different videos. We did a whole drone video the other day, which went really well.
excellent.
I don't know why, we just did. And so this is today's mix. I don't even know what podcast episode this is. As we've recorded this, we're up to 19, so this could be 20, which would seem quite logical.
Yeah.
But that said, we're filming about 3 at the moment, so who knows, whatever. And I tell you what, right, it's really wet, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, it really is. And it seems to be getting slightly more wet.
Getting worse. The forecast is for it to clear, but I think it's going to clear roughly the same time we finish.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, you never know.
Oh well, we work with it. We work with the conditions.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. I should also probably give a bit more context to where we are as well. Oh, look at that little. Is that a robin? Under the camera.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
sorry,
hi.
sorry, podcast listeners. We've got 2 cameras set up because obviously this goes out on YouTube as well, and we've got another camera set up so I can sort of chop between, as an editing thing. And there's a little robin sat right under the camera.
Which, we're 2 weeks from Christmas as we sit here doing this, and that's
look,
beautifully festive.
Oh my God.
Hello. For those listening, he just came very, very close, probably within about a foot of Paul's leg. He sat on a little branch for a second and off he went.
You're more conscious that this is a podcast than I am.
Yes.
My life is filming video and my ugly mug sat on the camera, so you're already more conscious. And me and Hedley do this, and we talk maps, and we completely forget about the poor people that listen. So again, apologies as always for that.
That's all right.
Right,
Yeah.
so we are, context of where we are, Kate, because I said, right, Kate's history love is more the railway side, as Kate said. So I thought, right, let's bring you to an abandoned station.
And what an abandoned station it is.
It's quite cool, isn't it?
It's so probably best if you explain where we are first before I start rambling.
So this is Fullerton Junction, which was the second incarnation of Fullerton Station. I think it was built in like 1881, 20 years after it was first built here. I've told the story 1,000 times on my own channel, but essentially this junction was built to facilitate the branch line, the Fullerton branch line up to Hurstbourne and on, and sort of make an offering to the Didcot, Newbury and Southampton Railway. And they turned it down. And what we're left with today, after the beach and cuts, because this was a beach enclosure, is this beautiful little bit of woodland. I've no idea who owns it, but someone is managing it, right? Because there's chopped trees in it.
It is maintained, definitely.
Yeah. And we're sat on what I think was a good platform to the branch line.
Yes. Yeah.
But you've still got this to me is what I love about abandoned railways, is you've got this. You've literally got this view. It's just strewn with nature, and you can see the platforms.
And I think this is the thing that a lot of people sort of forget, is when we're talking about these big infrastructure projects, whether they're now or whether they were back during Railway Mania, when they're no longer there, nature does take those things back.
Yeah.
And this is a piece of earth that's been here for thousands and thousands of years. It had a very short period of being very, very industrialised, but actually now we sit here, 150 years later, and there is trees and robins and countless other wildlife that would probably be around if it wasn't for the fact that it's 4 degrees and pouring it down.
I love that sense of I never really think of that sense of the big picture,
that kind of close of the circle.
Yeah, you're talking like we're talking like when you do abandoned railways, you just think of the history of the railway, not the context of the area that we're in.
And I think when we talk about those things, and I know you and I, we've discussed this before about my interest is always social history.
Yeah.
And when I say social history, I don't just actually mean in terms of people. I think kind of mean sort of more holistically than that. I like to look at that really big picture of what something is there for, what was its purpose before, what is its purpose now, and how it kind of has fitted into society and where it is. And so that's what I love about being somewhere like this, because we're absolutely in the back end of nowhere here.
Yeah, it feels like it, doesn't it?
Although we're not actually too far from a main road, but it is. You could be anywhere in the UK. You could be 50 miles from the nearest town or whatever.
Yeah.
And yet you still have this like huge piece of industry that was here, and is sort of been completely erased, other than what we have left.
Yeah. And I always the debate I always have in my own head when I'm here is, what should we do with this? Should we go, right, let's celebrate the railway and the history of the area and like take it all back and have some signs up and like the Hyde Holt that you showed me?
Yeah.
Should we do that here? Or should we just say, no, actually, let's just let nature do its thing here? I don't know. And I don't know what the answer is.
I think there's a place for both. And I think we have enough abandoned stations in this country that we can do both.
Yeah. Yes. But we often don't. We often just build a bunch of houses, don't we?
Yes.
Or an industrial estate or whatever. Not so much industrial estates these days, but how many housing estates do I turn up at and go, oh, there's a railway here, and it just depresses me.
I'm not surprised. And the other day I went for a walk at a place called Brathing, which was on a line called the Bunt, that ran from I did go to Buntingford. I'm sorry, there were very similar towns on a very similar part of the Hertfordshire countryside, and so I was up in Buntingford, which had one of the sort of archetypal classic country branch lines.
Yeah.
Built in the 1850s and closed around the time of beaching. And it was a grim day like this. I needed some fresh air. I'd been at work and it had been a tough day. Thought, I'll go for a walk on my lunch break. And I had a look. I looked at the old OSs and I found where the station was. And then I walked to it and found that actually there's nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing but a housing estate and the old station building, which has been restored to be a beautiful house. But they've also put private land in front of the house. It's a private road. You can't walk down it. You wouldn't want to.
No.
I took a picture from a distance.
Yeah.
But that was all I could do. You know. And it was just it's a shame in a way, but again, it's coming back to that full circle in the way that the world has to changes and moves on.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. It does. But I don't know. I really feel like they're doing something here, because they've chopped down a lot of trees. Yeah. Maybe that's the whole ash dieback problem we've had lately, but I don't know. But I think it'd be good to think that someone is managing it. But there we go. Maybe that's a project for when I'm a little bit older and I can contact whoever owns the land here, and we could do something. That'd be quite cool.
I think you've got enough projects as it is for now.
Yes, a very good point. It's a very good point. So, Kate, talk to me about the video we did.
Okay.
And why you love that history side of it.
So, I'm a learning disability nurse. I've been practicing in nursing for just over 20 years now, and I grew up in a family of learning disability nurses as well. Both my parents are LD nurses, and so was my grandma. And so we're 3 generations in my family in a fairly similar trade, but a trade that changes and evolves over time. And so when I was a kid, my parents worked in long stay hospitals, and I was always brought up around those because there was a huge sense of community around places like that at the time. So, for example, my dad, now who is 70, is part of a walking group that met when they worked at a secure hospital 35 years ago, and they all still walk together. They're actually out there now in Derbyshire having a sort of a 12-mile yomp in the pouring wet rain in Derbyshire. So if any of the Crumblies are listening to this, hello. But having interest in history and that sense of place, watching those places predominantly closed down. Sometimes bits of them are left as like offices and things like that, but again the vast majority of them get demolished and turned into housing estates generally. The NHS sold a lot of that land for an awful lot of money, an awful lot of money in the mid-90s. And the fact that when we were in that area, we had that combination of the railway, which is, it's now called the Oldham Way. It was the Hatfield to St Albans branch line. And the fact that I hadn't known until maybe about a year ago that this line went into the hospital from this railway. And you know how we know about stuff like the Necropolis Railway and stuff like that, and we find out about, from the Victorian era, you know, railways were set up for a very specific purpose. Hill End having that and then creating that sort of look of isolation, I find the whole railway thing fascinating as it is, but then thinking about the impact of the people, the way that the people lived. And what I absolutely loved after we told that story was the number of comments we got on the YouTube video from people who'd either been there to visit a family member or had family who had worked there, or I think there was even one chap who said that he'd been in there as a young person in the 80s.
I see.
And it was just really interesting to hear those lived stories of people, you know. And so that's why I was really, really keen to get in touch with you to share that story, because I knew it'd be something that would be relevant to what you do and what I'd seen on your channel, but also a story that I felt needed to be told.
And for me, as someone that makes films and like edits and puts them together, it was extremely easy to edit your video, because honestly, I probably have, when I'm reading from a script and I'm doing my videos, I must do like 4 or 5 takes. And in fact, yesterday I was out filming, I did about 4 or 5 takes on like every single bloody clip, and Kate did like boom, 1 take.
I think there was one that needed a retake, wasn't there?
Of maybe 10 different segments. There was like 10 segments, right, to that video, in terms of your interview. 10 segments, let's say, for example. And I think there was one, literally one, when you went, oh, actually, can I just redo that, because I'm not quite sure I said the right word. I'm like, sure, sounded fine to me, but sure. And I was like, Jesus, all right. So it was genuinely so easy to edit and put that together, because it was just like, you know.
So I think I'm going to add that compliment to my CV, if
do
that's
that,
okay.
Do that. I don't know how you're going to word it. You know, Paul said it was really easy to edit my waffle.
Yeah, and it is a lot of waffle, to be fair. I do love to talk.
Good. And it was good. It was succinct and good, and like good little, not sound bites, but do you know what I mean? It was good, nice chunks of, because we've done interviews before, and I don't want to knock anybody that we've obviously interviewed before. And everyone's got a story to tell, and they'll talk about everything, and I'm like, right, this is really tricky, because they've obviously got passion about what they're doing, but it's very tricky to then pick the pieces out. But the way we did it, or you did it, it was great, because I had like that segment, it was like really clear, and it was good. I don't know, it's
well, I was very grateful for your direction in it as well, because I'd never done anything like.
Did a lot, did I? Just set the camera up and say, right, stand there.
But you were telling me to stand there and talk about this at this point, and this at this point, and this at this point, because I'd never done anything like this before, and I've always wanted to. I am really interested in this sort of, I always refer to it as a niche. We have this niche within YouTube and podcasts and beyond of sort of, as I say, mine kind of blends in together with some history stuff, some railway stuff, and I find all of it, and also a little bit of travel and things like that. And so it's always something I thought maybe I could do, but I would have no idea where to start, right? And so I was very grateful for you to sort of say, right, chop this into segments, do it in this way, and then we'll edit it in a way that makes it look succinct.
Now, this is a good point. So your partner is an editor.
He has a degree in film and television production.
There you go. Right, you've got potential to do your. Whenever I talk to them, I say, why don't you do a YouTube channel on that? Because that's my life. But I'm like, you've got an editor built in there, right?
I have. It's not a field he works in now, and I think he'd be quite interested in sort of going back to it. So there's the potential, because honestly, I don't have. I'm a, how people have like big picture mentality, small picture mentality. Big detail, fine detail. I'm not a fine detail person.
But you learn that. You just throw yourself in the deep end.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
Just go. I'll just give it a go. You don't not necessarily, because it's YouTube. You're not like doing a job where I have to do this job perfectly. You just chuck yourself in the deep end and just go, I'll give it a go and see how it turns out.
Yeah,
and you've got a built-in editor.
Yeah.
You've seen a bit of me doing the whole filming full stop, and how, what's the right word is, ad hoc, just stick the camera there, that looks good. Oh, hang on a minute, the sun's there. There's no real science to it, is there? You just
No.
get on and...
I did do a media studies A level.
Oh, well...
I failed it. I got a U.
Yeah, but then you've still got better qualification. A U is better with the qualification than I've got, which is nothing at all.
And that was it. I thought it was something I really wanted to do, and then when I actually looked at what you had to do with it, I found it utterly boring.
Right.
Well, not boring, but just too challenging for the things that interest me.
Yeah.
But again, that wasn't on topics that actually interest me or enjoy me.
Yeah.
Or that I enjoy, and so it was like that wasn't for me at the time.
Yeah.
Shall we say that?
Yeah. That's fair enough. Fair enough. So what's next for you, Kate, in terms of the history in your area? We've got a couple of plans, haven't we? Actually, do a couple.
Yes.
Probably in the new year now, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Realistically.
It's going to be. We're running up towards the end of December, aren't we? And Christmas is a busy time for everybody.
Yeah.
But I'd love it if you were able to come back at some point up to Hertfordshire.
Yeah.
Hertfordshire's got. It's really interesting in a way. In that it's not interesting. Let me explain. Okay, let me wind back. Hertfordshire doesn't have a huge amount for the size of the county that it is in terms of historical context, particularly sort of pre-1000 AD.
Yeah.
And a big significant reason for that is the fact that you're actually, back in those days, you're a day's ride from London.
Yeah.
So actually most things were very London centric, and of course St Albans, which we do have with the Roman town there, and then you'd got Colchester. We didn't have any huge Roman settlements in between, ergo we didn't have a huge number of settlements prior to that, because obviously a lot of our Roman settlements. One of the reasons for that is we have no big rivers.
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
And,
it makes sense.
If you don't have those rivers, those trading ports didn't open around those. You have one Roman road runs up one side of the county, one Roman road runs up the other.
Yep.
Therefore, the bit in the middle was sort of a bit neglected until about 1000 AD or so. And then when coaching inns and stuff like that became more of a thing, that we kind of have that later history.
Yeah.
Last 1,000 years. Again, we kind of were glossed in the Industrial Revolution as well. So there's not a huge amount there. There's plenty of abandoned railways like there is across the country in general, but there are a few things that are really cool. The coolest one of which, in my view, and something that I think would be great, was there's a couple of the bits that of Roman stuff that are actually pretty great.
Yeah.
A lot of people know that there is an entire Roman villa and baths complex hidden under the A1M at Welling Garden City.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
No.
I had absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
That's just wonderful, isn't it?
I mean, I've never been. I've lived 5 miles from it for nearly 20 years, and I've never been.
Yeah.
And my daughter's been, because every single child seems to go there on a school trip.
Okay, yeah. That place.
It's that one place that we all have locally where everyone goes.
Right, we can go there.
Growing up for me, it was Jorvik Viking Centre, because I grew up in York,
I've been there
or near Yorkshire, or near York, and so it's very, very underutilised and under noticed, and it would be great if we could go and see it and open it up and kind of find out why. But also, again, looking at that sense of place, I find it fascinating how the road had to be built to accommodate the fact that was there. So they were building this whopping great big motorway, and thankfully this had been found 2 or 3 years before, which is why, if you ever... Terribly niche, I'm afraid, chaps, but if you ever need to drive around junction 6 of the A1M, you think, why on earth do I have to come off and go around 4 roundabouts to get to where I want to go? And that's the sole purpose for it.
I think I've driven that bit, and I'm like, it looks messy, doesn't it, for no reason.
Your ordinary motorway junction goes like that. Down the middle of the motorway, you've got the circle at the top or underneath, right? And that's how you get off or on. Junction 6 of the A1M has... That's in one direction going south, coming off. But every of the other 3 directions that you can use that motorway are completely bonkers. Completely and totally bonkers.
And it's because of that.
And it's because they had to move it around where they'd found this fantastic Roman trove, right?
Isn't it? That is another element to it, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's my sense of history and putting back into that sense of place and purpose. And then the other one that I think is really interesting in our area is, and this is why I mentioned it when I got my places wrong, is Braffing. Braffing was on Ermine Street, but also it was kind of the Roman equivalent of Spaghetti Junction. There were 7 roads went into Braffing, 4 of which were fairly major. And it's now just a tiny village. And I think that would be quite interesting to explore.
That happens, isn't it? I've come across that a couple of times now, where there's been a big, like a centre where Roman roads cross, but there's nothing there now.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, Silchester's a good example, but there was actually a town there. But yeah, even Andover, there are 2 Roman roads crossed on where it's called East Anton.
Yeah.
But there was nothing there.
No.
There was no. They found a villa, but it's like that's it. It's like,
But again, it's about sense of place and sense of purpose, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in 2,000 years, our reasons for having things where they were have changed.
Yeah.
We live very, we don't have the same fundamental principles as people had or needed then.
Yeah.
And that's why, isn't it? That's why it's changed. And I'm sure in 2,000 years' time, people will be looking and go, why the hell did they put a planned town where Letchworth Garden City is?
Yeah.
Which is another thing we want to do.
Yes.
Another thing that we want to go and have a look at. Again, as I say, Hertfordshire's like prehistory stuff and early history is quite minimal, but in the last 100 years has been phenomenally exciting, actually.
Probably because of its location to London.
Yeah, and that's exactly why they were built.
Circle, isn't it?
So with the birthplace of the Garden City movement, Letchworth was built in started around 1904, and I've done a little bit of research and something that we're going to go out and have a look at around why those garden cities were built where they were.
Yeah.
And again, it's really interesting because Welling Garden City was built because it was at the crossroads of 4 railways, of which now 3 are no longer there.
Yeah.
You've got you've got a line out to Hertford, you've got a line out towards Luton, and then you've got slightly further south, 2 miles south, you've got the one that we explored, the St Albans and Hatfield line. So that was why they chose that location for the second garden city at Letchworth. And again, seems slightly purposeless now because those railways are gone, right? And so I think it's something that would be really interesting for us to kind of go and explore. There's some interesting stuff around car use there as well. For people who want a really, really fun pub quiz fact, the first roundabout in the world was built in Letchworth in 1909. So if anyone ever asks you that, if you're ever putting a pub quiz together and you want to say where was the first ever roundabout, there's your answer.
Stick it in a pub quiz. So was that by design?
Yes, deliberate design.
Actually a deliberate design of a roundabout. Somebody said, I've got an idea.
Yeah.
What happens if we do this as a junction? That's cool.
It was called a traffic circus, I believe, at the time. I'm not 100% sure.
Traffic circus.
It's called
That's genius.
It's called Solarshot Circus.
Why don't we call those now?
And I'm such a fantastic nerd that I actually have an art print of it on the wall in my house. Yes.
Traffic circus.
Unapologetic. So
maybe that should be the title of this podcast.
What, Traffic Circus?
Traffic circus.
It'd be really funny if that's not actually what it's called and I've got that wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fine. We can also hint. We can let the viewers know that we messed up a little bit. Who cares? Whatever. It's all good.
Yeah.
I really hope. Well, I know that the sound's going to come out okay, but and maybe that's a good thing about a podcast as well, is you can actually hear all the stuff going on in the background.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I listened to a little one called Hidden Wiltshire. Great little podcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And sometimes they do an outdoor one as well, and I kind of appreciate the audio, the acoustic of the whatever.
Yes.
The old birds singing and that sort of thing. So maybe it's good.
It's very sort of
wet.
I was going to say
really
atmospheric, but Paul's right.
Oh.
It's wet.
It is really wet and miserable day today. But that's right. We're good. It is. We're going to stop soon.
Yeah.
And it is literally going to stop raining.
Exactly, and it's such a shame because it would have been lovely to have a little sort of wander around and find out more. But it's
just
a pretty
silly, isn't it?
grey December day, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. So that's in terms of things I'd like to explore and discover. And beyond that, I'm not sure yet, if I'm perfectly honest.
Well, this is kind of what Rebecca and I wanted for the channel, which was to have more stories and to have I know what the right word is, correspondence. But that's not the wrong word. But do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Your social history is obviously your big thing.
Yes.
And the context of everything. And I love that, and that's great because then you can help. Hedley brings us the quirky stories, the hill forts, and the amazing dronage. And to have a little team of people behind me is sort of really appreciated. In the madness of trying to run a YouTube channel which offers some context and some history and something that people will hopefully sort of appreciate. So, and you can't do it on your own because it just does your head in.
No, absolutely. I think people don't actually. How many young people today, when you say to them when they're 14, 15, I work in young people's services, and I quite often will sort of say to my young people or their families or whatever, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I tell you what, about 90% of the time they'll say, "Oh, I want to be a YouTuber."
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, I get that. I get lots of people say that.
It surprises me.
"Oh, I want to be a TikToker."
Yeah.
And I don't think people realise the work and effort and how lonely it can be as well.
Totally,
It's a lot of, particularly if you're a solo person channel, you go off and do a lot of stuff on your own.
Isn't it amazing though how that survives still after like a decade?
I know.
Things come and go, right?
Yeah.
But YouTube sticks around, doesn't it?
Yeah. Let's not curse it.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Well, I mean, we're not cursing YouTube, we're cursing long form content.
Yes.
And by long form, I mean 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned TikTok. That's life, isn't it? People,
100%. 100%. People watch and absorb those sort of smaller, shorter, and with no disrespect to people who do that for a living, sort of lower quality, more output content.
Yeah.
You can be very well known on TikTok literally for just posting what you eat every day on the internet.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
But also I think the scrutiny that comes with it is much more. It's much more toxic.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And I think that's something that takes a very particular kind of person to be able to absorb and keep that as well. But I'm getting a bit too philosophical.
It's all good. This is long form.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think again, being a storyteller, long form is a great thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of. If you're somebody like me who's naturally curious about the world, and naturally curious around the environment that I'm in, knowing those stories and being able to share those stories I find fascinating. Really, really interesting.
And I don't know about you as well, but the feedback you get, like we had a few conversations after the video went live, we had a few conversations about all the comments.
Yes.
And that for me is one of the best parts. It's one of the many parts, but actually reading that people are, I didn't know that, or I used to live there
and I had no idea that was there.
And 100 different types of comment that are all positive. And there's obviously negative ones because there's idiots out there, but let's not dwell on that. The positivity around all the different types of comments is just wonderful, and that kind of keeps you going.
Yes, I can see why. Absolutely,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people are, oh, this is such a cool thing. Oh, you've inspired me to do this, or they give you more info. They say, oh, yeah, actually, just down the road from you, there was a so-and-so and a so-and-so, or I used to work there. Like you've just said about the guy, or I used to be there for a while. And that makes it, not just the this is a great video kind of, lovely comments that you get, but the ones where they give you more. The
ability to tell a story and someone else share their story back with you is a big part of, it's a big part of life to me anyway. And so that's a lovely thing. And, I think there are so many stories out there, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I was so grateful for you to listen to my nagging and go, here, look, I've got this idea. I know it seems out of the blue and I'm a random stranger on the internet, but what do you think? Can we make this work?
Well, it worked, didn't it, I think.
And it did. And it's kind of, I'm glad it went down well. I was really, really pleased because it was something slightly different for your channel. And a lot of people did comment on that saying, this is not what I expected from a nice little video about a railway.
How many people said, more cake, please, more cake. And I was like, that's great. That's really,
very, very
then
grateful
that's positive, isn't it?
But obviously in that, when we did that video, we did tell the story of Joan.
Yeah.
And obviously Joan wasn't her real name. And it was, I would imagine she's somebody who's fairly forgotten about in life. I would imagine, I last worked with her in 2008. That's the last I heard of her. At which point I think she was in her mid-80s.
Oh, well,
So we're talking a long time ago. She's very, very
100
and something if she was still around now. And so I don't think there'd be anyone in life other than people who perhaps worked with her back then who would remember her. And it was nice to be able to tell her story. And a lot of people, after we made that video, quite a few of the comments said, why don't you go and explore more of this sort of thing? Why don't you go and explore more of the hospitals? And I'm going to be really honest with you about why I don't think that's a good idea. And the truth is, they're all fairly similar.
Right, similar stories.
Similar stories, similar situations. It's not always necessarily terribly positive, and I'm not someone who ever wants to sort of dwell on negativity for clout. But also at the same time, a lot of these hospitals were very, very similar setups. It's a bit like railways really. They all opened around the same time, they all closed around the same time. They were all there for the same sort of purpose. And a lot of them are all very similar looking now and have the same sort of thing. I think Hill End is interesting because it had the railway. And there are others like that. And people again in the comments mentioned, you heard about Hyroids up at Leeds. That was very similar. Basingstoke.
Pruitt or something, I think that was called. Yeah. Yep.
And oh wow.
Okay, we're getting wet.
It's just really started to pour. Really has started to pour. I'm regretting the decision not to wear waterproof mascara this morning. So apologies if I look like a panda on camera right now. Unfortunately, for someone who likes walking around and yomping in woods, I also don't really dress like somebody who enjoys walking around and yomping in woods.
People say this to me all the time. People say this to me, right? There's a few that say, when will you learn not to wear jeans when you're out walking? I'm like, yeah, okay, fair point.
As you're sat here in jeans, absolutely drenched.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I'm wearing a dress, which is definitely not an appropriate outfit for here.
So,
but at least my legs are a lot drier than yours in jeans.
Yeah, this is it. Honestly, we get so many of those comments, and lovely people meaning well. And I'm just like, yeah, no, you're absolutely right, mate.
Yeah.
I really need to sort my life out in terms of walking. So
you need to get yourself some proper walking trousers.
Walking trousers, everything, everything. I need to. I mean, I'm getting there, but one step at a time. It's only been 6 years.
I'll send you to my dad and his walking group. They're terribly competitive about their kit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they're all from Yorkshire as well, so it's all about who can get the best kit for the lowest price.
Yeah.
And it's almost a little bit of a spitting contest in terms of who's done the best. It's really funny. And again, apologies to any of the crumblies that might have heard this.
Fair play. Right, well, we should probably wrap up soon.
Yes.
I don't know if this will be a standalone podcast or if Hedley's going to do similar and waffle at some other point as well. But this has been a podcast, who knows what number, because we've got a lot on at the moment. But it has been a podcast, I can confirm that. And big thanks to Kate for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Which is exactly what I wanted this Wessex Ways podcast to be about. Is a little extension to the videos and give, all sorts. And me and Hedley have got a lot of ideas about how we want to sort of develop and build this podcast and to be a sort of a bigger thing than what it is. So this is all part of the wonderful tapestry of that. You'll see Kate again, I'm sure, whether it's on this Wessex Ways podcast or whether it's on the Paul and Rebecca White channel as well, in various capacities and guises.
As you say about correspondence, I'm more than happy to be your home county's correspondent.
There you go, right, that's it. We need an official title, really, don't we, for it? We need like an official, I think, like when we do a little graphic underneath, it says Kate. Blah, 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 blah.
Professional waffler, I think, is probably the best one I can come up with at the moment. Yeah, sorry, I won't take your title.
That's my job.
Apologies. Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you for giving me a chance to professionally waffle. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
And so if you're on the podcast, as always, do... I don't know what you do on a podcast. Do you follow it? I guess you follow it, don't you?
Subscribe to it, don't you?
I don't know.
I've no idea.
I know. We'll do all the good things you're supposed to do.
Yes, please.
And we'll love you and leave you. We're going to go back into a warm place of some description.
Yes.
I don't know what, even if it's the car, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Thanks for listening, people.